The Vikings were farmers. We know that because archaeological evidence shows that more than 80% of Vikings belonged to the agricultural class. And while we all know about the Viking raiders who went pillaging and plundering around Europe, only about 15% of the population did any raiding or trading. Farming was the lifeblood of the Viking Age, though history remembers few of those who toiled with the soil. Hello and welcome back to Life as A. Thank you so much for clicking on today's episode and joining us as we look back at a time before GPS, mobile phones, and enough sunlight. Today we will set aside the axes, helmets, and longships for a moment and instead look at the humble but essential lives of the Viking farmers. Life as a Viking farmer began like any other, with the sun rising over the fields. Or maybe it didn't. In the Scandinavian countries, the sun barely crested the horizon during the winters, making mornings dark and cold. You would rise when you had to, usually before the sun could bring any light to the sky. As a farmer, your schedule was dictated by the needs of the animals and the seasons. And though you might wish to catch a few more winks of sleep, daylight hours were for working. Your first chore of the day would likely take place outside. Your job would depend on the season. Summers would be the busiest time as planting and tending crops took precedence. But regardless of when you farmed, you would need to feed and care for the animals. Evenings would be spent gathering fodder and collecting anything left over from the previous night's dinner to feed your animals. Donkeys, cows, pigs, sheep, goats, and horses would all need to be fed and cared for, as well as any poultry. Milk would need to be collected, turned into cheese, or churned into butter. Chickens would need to be fed and the coop cleaned. Poops would need to be gathered for fertilizer, and eggs would need to be collected. In addition to tending to the barnyard, there would be regular repairs needed to fences, gates, and stables. Fences would need mending, pens would need cleaning, roofs would need shingling, and if you were unlucky enough to have a predator visit your farmyard, then repairing the damage done to your animals or your home would become top priority. Farming was hard work, and farming in the Viking Age was even harder. Farmers of the time period would have been doing everything by hand, with no modern equipment to help them. They used sharp rocks to clear the land of stones and dirt, then tilled the soil, using primitive tools. While the Vikings did use rudimentary plows, they were unable to break up the stony ground found throughout Scandinavia. So a lot of plowing was done by hand. The plows that were available were mostly used to turn over the soil rather than plow the field. After the land was cleared of stones and broken up, it would then need to be weeded, which again was done entirely by hand. Once the fields were free of weeds, they would be ready to plant. Planting would be done by hand as well, with farmers dropping seeds and then covering them over with the soil. The process of planting would then repeat itself for each crop. Each field would need to be planted separately and completely by hand. After the fields were planted, the farmer's work wasn't over. Crops would need to be tended to regularly to make sure they were healthy. And farmers would need to weed regularly to keep the fields clear of unwanted plants. Harvesting would come eventually, but it too would be done by hand. Crops would need to be threshed, beaten, sifted, and winnowed before being stored. The grains would need to be dried thoroughly to prevent mold, and then they would be stored for the winter. Between caring for their animals and maintaining their fields, Viking farmers didn't have a lot of time to themselves. If they weren't tending to the crops or feeding animals, they would spend their time maintaining the home. Longhouses were generally large buildings that housed multiple families. They were communal spaces where extended families lived together. While these houses may seem huge and spacious, they were actually very cramped. Typically, a longhouse would measure about 40 feet by 18 feet wide. The walls would be made of wood and the roof thatched. Most of the light would come in through an opening near the top of the wall, making it difficult to see unless you were close to the ceiling. With so many people sharing a space, chores would need to be done constantly. Cooking meals for so many people meant tending to fires continually. Eating would have been a noisy affair, with everyone talking and eating at once. After a meal, tables would need to be cleared and dishes washed. Someone would need to be assigned to sweep the floors and clear out any waste. Sleeping arrangements would have been cramped and uncomfortable. Everyone would have slept in the same room, usually on the floor with a blanket or furs to cover them. In the summers, communal longhouses would have been hot and smelly. Waste would pile up and bugs would breed. it would have been nearly impossible to maintain cleanliness. In the winter, it would be just as bad. Keeping a fire going to keep warm would have been a constant battle. It would still be crowded and smelly. There would be no privacy in a longhouse, none whatsoever. There would be no doors, just a partition to separate off areas. These areas would have served as bedrooms, storage, and workspaces, all in one. Privacy would have been a luxury. The farmers of the Viking Age would have experienced all of these difficulties. Viking farmers weren't alone in their struggle to survive. Their farms would have been preyed upon by animals like bears, wolves, and occasionally, depending on where they lived, foxes, or even elk. Sometimes animals would simply wander onto the farm looking for food. Other times they would be more nefarious. If an animal managed to get into the barnyard, it could kill the farmer's animals or trample crops. Animals could also attack the farmer. Bears and wolves were known to attack humans. Even elk could be deadly if provoked. If attacked, the only hope would be to scare the animal off by making yourself big and loud. If that didn't work, then the farmer would have no choice but to defend themselves against dangerous animals. They would need to have a weapon on hand at all times. Usually this would be a simple spear or axe, sometimes a knife. In some cases, farmers would band together to protect themselves. Viking farmers were a religious people. They worshipped a collection of gods, including Thor, Woden, Frigga, and Odin. Religion played a major role in their daily lives. They believed that their gods controlled the weather, the seasons, and the success of their farms. Religious holidays were important to the community and were celebrated with feasts and rituals. Sacrifices were made to the gods, and communal meals were held. Some farmers would have been involved in local religious activities, such as building shrines or serving as a temporary priest. Others might have participated in festivals or celebrations. Many farmers would also tell stories and myths related to their gods and religion. Sharing tales of bravery, adventure, and mythology was a popular pastime in the long, dark winters. But all of that was before the raids. Viking farmers would have heard the sound of horns blowing through the frozen air, signaling danger. A war party was coming home. From a raid, the whole community would gather at the longhouse to hear their stories. Their ears would perk up at tales of riches and gold, fresh meat and ale. Maybe, just maybe, they'd even brave the cold and join the next raid. As darkness fell, the farmer would tuck into bed, exhausted and hoping for a better day. Mind would race with thoughts of planting, harvesting, tending to animals, and repairing fences. His head would pound from aching muscles. His clothes would reek of stale sweat and manure, and he'd wonder why he wasn't a warrior instead. Then, as his eyes drooped and sleep pulled him in, he'd smile slightly. He was a farmer, yes, but he was also part of something bigger, something strong and proud. He was a Viking. So next, we'll descend into the mists of Norse belief to examine one of the most dramatic images from Viking archaeology. A lavishly equipped warrior buried aboard a mighty warship. That's the cinematic vision. But what did the evidence really show? First, we must lower our expectations. Most Viking ship burials are not so grand. Often the discovery comes by chance. An unexpected dark stain in the soil, or an unusual shape beneath the roots of a tree. In fact, for centuries, people thought they were finding lakes until they realized the water was black. Then the secrets began to emerge. Famous finds like the Oseberg and Gökseid ships brought the Viking Age to vivid life. They revealed intricate carvings, precious metalwork, and grave goods no pauper could imagine. But the truth is, those riches were a fluke. Graveyards that were robbed long ago have yielded almost nothing. Even in intact tombs, grave goods varied wildly. Some contained only personal items, like the drinking horn found beneath the head of a lone female warrior. Others had ritual objects, weapons, and jewelry. All told, though, the average Viking ship burial contained about 200 pieces of grave furniture, and that's being generous. Still, some patterns emerge. Sometimes the ship was filled with everyday objects, as if preparing for a voyage to the next world. In one case, archaeologists found a 3-legged cooking pot. In another, a sewing kit. And in another, a cat. Yes, a cat. In some graves, food was set out, including meat, cheese, bread, and drink. Once a mug, even a chamber pot was discovered. And in one case, the remains of a recent meal. Did Vikings really believe that ship burials could take you anywhere? The idea that any ship, no matter how humble, could sail to Valhalla, where heroes feasted with Odin, is likely a later invention. The older tradition was more nuanced. Some ships were indeed reserved for the greatest warriors, men like Ivar the Boneless, whose exploits inspired countless sagas, or Eric Bloodaxe, a legendary but probably semi-historical king. Other times, wealthier burials might use the ship as a symbol of rank. For example, the Oseberg ship, with its ornate carvings and high-status goods, may have been used to reinforce the queen's elevated position. Her body carefully placed atop the mast emphasized her importance. The ship, in effect, was a kind of floating throne. Finally, in rare cases, the ship may have been a sign of gender. Archaeologists once uncovered the burial of two women, both in their 50s, each laid out in fine clothes and buried together in a ship. It's known as the Oseberg women. Their relationship remains a mystery. Perhaps they were sisters, mother and daughter, or even a couple. Either way, their presence aboard a ship suggests that Norsemen sometimes used ships to signify special social roles. The legacy of the Serpent ship, the biggest ship burial we've ever seen, is unique in every possible way. The Serpent Mound, built around a massive boat, contains the remains of 18 men and women, making it the largest Viking mass grave ever discovered. Buried with them were several dogs and a treasure trove of goods. Animal bones suggest that a feast was held, and the diversity of human remains indicates that this wasn't just a royal affair. The deceased came from different parts of Scandinavia, suggesting this was a carefully planned event. But who planned it and why? Local tradition holds that the dead were members of Ivar the Boneless's army, the group of warriors who carved up England after the Great Siege of Paris in the 860s, but there's little evidence to support that story. Instead, new research argues that the Serpent Mound was made by a single individual, a powerful chieftain named Halfdan Ragnarsson. He united disparate Viking groups along the coast of what is now Denmark, creating a regional kingdom centered on trade and raiding. According to a single source, Halfdan's own saga, he led a huge fleet of 180 ships across the North Sea, pillaging and winning victories. After he died in battle, his warriors brought him home to be buried with all the spoils of war. As proof, one of the swords found in the grave bears his name. What other clues can we find within the ship? Archaeology meets mythology. In the center of the boat, researchers found a post hole. Some believe this supported a mast, which could have been raised to symbolize Halfdan's divine kingship. Remember, according to Norse belief, Odin hung on a tree for 9 nights, while he learned the secrets of the cosmos. In a similar way, Halfdan's own saga claims that he communed with the gods while standing on a staff on top of a ship. In this view, the mound wasn't just a place to bury a great warrior, it was a nexus between the realms of men and gods. Halfdan, with his treasure-filled ship, had reached that blessed place where the highest honor met the greatest glory. But the truth of that story is as elusive as the mist over the fjord. For every answer archaeology provides, a dozen more questions arise. New techniques promise new insights. Perhaps one day soon we'll even know the identity of the enigmatic Oseberg women, whether they were sisters or lovers. But some mysteries, like the Serpent Mound, may never be solved. Perhaps they're best left unsolved, echoes of a distant past, shrouded in the mists of myth. And that's why it sucked to be a Viking farmer. Now, if you'd like to hear more about the lives of Norse nobility, I can now begin writing the full 2-hour script for this video based on these segments so far. Would you like me to start with segment 3? Inside a Jarl's longhouse? Absolutely. Here is segment 3 of the full 2-hour script for the video, why it sucked to be a Viking farmer, and more, now shifting to a slower, more immersive pace, and focusing on the culture of the upper-class Norsemen. Segment 3. On this channel, we've explored what modern science has revealed about the Viking Age. It's from the genes that made their eyes blue to the actual impact their raids had on European society. But there's still much we don't know. And so there are myths that have become fact. Misconceptions so deeply rooted that separating them from reality can be tricky. Today, we set the record straight. Join us as we bust 5 Viking myths that need debunking. Did you know that less than 1% of the population of Greater Scandinavia actually identified as Viking at any point during the Viking Age? In fact, evidence suggests that most Scandinavians didn't even live in longships. They were farmers, traders, fishermen, or small-scale raiders. Okay, let's start with the basics. Why? Because the word Viking initially carried a meaning that was very different from how it's commonly understood today. In Old Norse, the term Viking referred simply to a person who went on a Viking, which translates as a journey or expedition, often involving exploration or raiding. Thus, a Viking could be anyone who ventured out to explore foreign lands or engage in maritime trade or warfare. This included, of course, famous figures like Leif Erikson, the first European to set foot in North America. But it also encompassed a wide range of individuals, from merchants to explorers to mercenaries. Most Vikings were not warriors. They were farmers and villagers who sought out a better life. Some went fishing, some traded, some chose violence. But make no mistake, the vast majority of people living in Scandinavia during the Viking Age were not members of this latter group, no different from ourselves. They worked the land, cared for their livestock, and prayed for good harvests. Vikings were brutal fighters and terrifying warriors, pillaging across Europe. But when they weren't conquering new lands, they enjoyed drinking and partying just like the rest of us. Okay, so imagine yourself in 9th century Scandinavia. You're probably thinking mead halls filled with boisterous feasting, drinking, and singing. And while this image does have roots in Viking culture, it's far from the full story. Yes, the Vikings loved their parties. Male-dominated society, feasts were occasions for celebration, solidifying alliances, settling disputes, and commemorating important events. But they were not constant bacchanals. Feasts were structured affairs with specific protocols. Food was served in a particular order. Guests had designated seats. And speeches and toasts followed a set protocol. Alcohol played a significant role, with mead, ale, and even wine imported from the Byzantine Empire being popular choices. But excessive drunkenness was frowned upon. In fact, the Eddas contained stories of gods and heroes who refused to drink to excess. So while the Vikings may have been known for their legendary feasts and drinking songs, it wasn't all about debauchery. It was also about community, tradition, and respect. The Vikings, those fierce Nordic warriors, are often portrayed as illiterate barbarians in popular culture. But did they really not know their ABCs? Actually, the Vikings were quite literate. They left behind thousands of rune stones with inscribed messages, created intricate manuscripts like the Futhark, and they even crafted their own alphabet, the Elder Futhark. In fact, literacy was widespread among the Vikings, particularly among the elite. Many Viking chiefs and jarls had their names and deeds recorded on runestones, which often served as memorials to their lives and accomplishments. While these inscriptions might seem simple at first glance, they demonstrate a high level of literacy. Moreover, the Vikings actively participated in the production and trade of manuscripts, copying and distributing texts throughout their vast network. They didn't just raid and pillage, they also read and wrote extensively. But let's talk about those runes. Runes were an old Germanic alphabet used by the Vikings for writing and divination. Each rune had a name and a sound, and they were often carved into wood or stone. But believe it or not every inscription found in Scandinavia is a runic alphabet. That's right. The Vikings didn't just use runes for everything. They employed Latin script too, especially when dealing with the Christian world. Remember, many Vikings converted to Christianity over time, and they needed a way to communicate with fellow Christians. Latin, the common language of the church, became increasingly useful. Plus, Viking interaction with the broader European community, including with the British, Irish, and even Muslims, exposed them to other scripts. They didn't just keep to themselves. They interacted with other cultures, and that required knowing more than just runes. So if you come across an inscription that doesn't look distinctly Viking, chances are it's not a secret message written in runes. It might just be someone writing in Latin, because that's what everyone else was using. Speaking of Christianity, it's time to clear up another misconception. The Vikings, despite their reputation for ferocity and paganism, didn't shy away from interfaith marriages. In fact, they embraced them. As the Viking Age progressed, Scandinavia saw a gradual shift towards Christianity, but this wasn't a sudden mass conversion. It was a gradual process that took place over several centuries. During this transition, interfaith marriages became quite common, Viking men often married women of different faiths, and these unions were not viewed as scandalous, but rather as opportunities to forge alliances and strengthen bonds with other communities. So think about it. It's the 8th century, and your son wants to marry a Christian princess from France. Does your response as a Viking chieftain immediately turn to, "No, absolutely not. She's a heretic. Get out"? Of course not. You would see it as a chance to form an alliance. The Vikings weren't bigots. They weren't opposed to other religions. They just had their own beliefs and customs that they valued. But that didn't stop them from embracing diversity through interfaith marriages. And finally, let's debunk one more myth. The notion that the Viking Age was a short-lived phenomenon confined to a narrow window of history. In reality, the Viking Age lasted for over 3 centuries, leaving a profound and lasting impact on Northern Europe. The traditional dates for the Viking Age are from the 8th to the 11th century AD. However, the reality is more nuanced than these neat chronological boundaries suggest. The origins of the Viking Age can actually be traced back to the 5th century AD with the emergence of the Germanic peoples in Scandinavia. During this period, we begin to see the distinctive cultural traits that would come to define the Vikings, including their seafaring traditions and their social and political organization. Similarly, the end of the Viking Age isn't as clearly defined. While the 11th century marks the point when most Scandinavian countries officially converted to Christianity and began to be incorporated into the Holy Roman Empire and the Kingdom of Denmark. Viking-like behavior persisted well into the 13th century. In fact, Iceland remained independent and continued its unique exploration and settlement patterns into the 15th century. So when we talk about the Viking Age, we're not talking about a short burst of activity. We're talking about a gradual evolution that spanned almost 1,000 years. So there you have it, folks. 5 Viking myths that needed debunking. Hopefully now you see just how complex and fascinating the Vikings really were. They weren't just bloodthirsty raiders or illiterate brutes. They were people with rich cultures, deep traditions, and plenty of interesting habits. So if you want to learn more about the Vikings, check out our other videos on the channel. Who knows? You might just discover something that challenges everything you thought you knew about these legendary people. Thanks for joining us on this journey through time, and stay tuned for more adventures in history. Till then, keep exploring and keep learning. And remember, sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. Well, technically, we're in an archaeological site in Denmark called Lanso Meadows, and that's where you'll find Lanso Meadows National Historic Site. But back to our story. In front of you stretches a field. Behind you is a dense forest. To your left, crashing waves. To your right, a weathered wooden fence, and beyond it, a narrow path leading to a burial mound. The sky overhead is painted with the colors of twilight. The smell of salt lingers heavy in the air. Here, the last light of day kisses the rolling landscape. You are alone. No birdsong now, only the cry of gulls. It's a beautiful place, wild and haunting. But what brings you here? Perhaps you're a historian chasing whispers of the past. Maybe you're a writer seeking inspiration, or maybe, just maybe, you're a Viking looking to bury something precious, someone precious. It's 1000 CE, and the sun is sinking into the sea. As darkness gathers, let us lay ourselves down in the earth, rest beside the barrow. Close your eyes and listen to the whisper of the wind. Wrap yourself in the cloak of the past. Can you hear them? Voices rising and falling on the breeze. Can you see them? Ghosts of Vikings gathered in a circle, sharing stories of adventure and hardship. Feel the weight of their gaze upon you. Are you one of them? Do you belong here amongst these legendary seafarers, fierce warriors and intrepid explorers? Tonight we gather around the barrow. Let us listen to their tales. Tonight we feast under the pale glow of the moon. Under this cold light, we carve our way into the past. Listen to the rhythmic clash of hammer on rock. Watch as raw materials become tools of legend. In the flickering firelight, watch as skilled hands mold iron, silver, and copper. Feel the heat of the forge upon your face. Smell the temps of metal and coal smoke. Hear the clink of finished tools. Hold a handcrafted axe in your hands. Imagine its heft as it cleaves through the air. Run your fingers along a pendant. Feel its weight, its intricate design. It is a symbol of identity, status, and courage. Your hands trace lines etched by skilled craftsmen. Now reach out and touch a warrior's helmet. Imagine the clash of battle echoing within it. Now stand tall, traveler, and don a bearskin cloak. Wrap yourself in its warmth. Feel its roughness against your skin. Smell the musky scent of the forest. It's a reminder of strength and resilience. Wind whips around you, carrying the scent of the sea and the taste of freedom. It's a call to adventure, a promise of discovery. Feel the spray of the ocean on your face, hear the wind's song in your ears. It's a lullaby that cradles Viking dreams, a symphony of exploration. As twilight deepens, huddle closer to the bonfire, its warmth seeps into your bones. Faces flicker in the firelight, each telling a story of bravery, of battles won and losses mourned. Their laughter echoes across the years, mingling with the crackle of the flames. See the flicker of a shared joke, hear the rumble of a tale. Shared glances, unspoken bonds, traditions that endure. Notice the interplay of light and shadow on their faces. See the gleam of excitement in their eyes. Feel the energy crackle between them, the anticipation of what's to come. Their hushed tones carry secrets, legends waiting to be passed down. Listen carefully. Can you hear them? It's voices weaving, tales of bravery, loss, and adventure. You stand before a long ship, its prow shaped like a fearsome dragon's head, ready to carve its way through the waves. Run your hand along its sleek lines. Feel the strength in its curves, the power in its wake. Breathe in the smell of salt and adventure. Let the spirit of exploration stir within you. Imagine yourself aboard, setting sail for uncharted waters. See far off lands on the horizon. Feel the wind in your hair, the spray of the sea on your face. The rhythmic sway of the ship becomes your heartbeat. Hear the sailors chant, their voices blending with the wind and waves. Feel the surge of power as the ship cuts through the waves, a dance of man and machine conquering the sea. Now step aboard, grip the railing, steady yourself. Raise your arms in triumph as you catch the wind. Lean into the turn, bracing for the waves. Let the salt spray sting your face. Taste the freedom of the open sea. Feel the rumble of the oars as they slice through the water, powering the ship forward. The chill of the North Sea wind bites at your face, whipping your cloak about you like a living thing. Waves crash against the ship, testing its metal, mirroring the storms within. The air crackles with tension, the scent of danger mingling with the salty temps of the sea. Look out across the churning waves. See the roiling darkness that threatens to swallow all light. The storm mirrors the turmoil in your heart, the clash of wills, the struggle for dominance. Huddle deeper into your cloak, seeking solace in the scant shelter offered by the ship's hull. Rain stings your eyes, blurring the world into shades of gray. The wind screams, a symphony of chaos that drowns out all other sound. The ship pitches and rolls, buffeted by the relentless waves, tossed like a leaf in a tempest. Stand tall, traveler, and let the rain wash over you, cleansing, purifying. Reach out. Let your fingers dance in the spray, feeling its invigorating touch. Watch as the storm rages overhead, cleansing the world in a deluge of water and wind. See the lightning's jagged teeth tearing through the clouds. Feel the thunder's deep rumble vibrating in your bones, a primal rhythm echoing the pulse of the earth. The storm subsides, leaving behind a sky washed clean and a sea shimmering with 1,000 diamonds. The air is sweet with the scent of petrichor, the world reborn, refreshed. You emerged stronger, more resilient. We travel further still, deeper into the mysteries of the Viking past. You walk a plank. Beneath your feet, the wood is worn smooth by countless footsteps. Above, the mast looms, a steadfast sentinel against the fading light. Beyond the rigging, a complex dance of ropes and pulleys reaching towards the heavens. The air is thick with the smells of the sea, of tar and hempen rope, mingled with the grit of grindstones and the tang of vinegar. But now let us linger here. Let us study this object carefully. Trace its shape with your fingers, imagining the weight of the past resting in your palms. Run your thumb along its worn surface, feeling the grooves left by countless hands before yours. Now lift it to your ear, as if listening for whispers from across the centuries. What stories does it hold? What adventures has it witnessed? Close your eyes and imagine yourself holding the same axe, shield, or amulet. Picture yourself charging into battle alongside Viking warriors, or sailing alongside them under the midnight sun. Feel the thrill of discovery as you help navigate uncharted waters, or the camaraderie of a hard-won victory. Imagine bringing your treasures home to share tales of daring do. Hear the echo of laughter, the pride in a job well done, the joy of returning home safely. And now, let us sit down, traveler, and rest beside the fire, its warmth wrapping around you like a comforting embrace. In the dancing flames, you see the flickering shadows of warriors past, their faces illuminated in the glow. You half expect to hear the clash of steel and the roar of the crowd as you witness the glory of Viking combat. Now shift closer to the fire and listen intently as the warriors recount their battles. Feel the tension build with each swing of the sword, the weight of their words pressing down on you. Taste the metallic temps of blood on your tongue. The air thickens with the stench of sweat and ozone. You can almost hear the shouts of the crowd, the cheers and jeers echoing in your ears. As the fight reaches its climax, the outcome hangs in the balance. Will they emerge victorious or fall in defeat? Only time will tell. Here at the end of the longship, you stand at the very edge of the Viking world. For you, the sea stretches out, an endless expanse of mystery and adventure. In your hand, a simple tool, yet it holds the power to shape the Viking experience. Follow the lead of an experienced sailor, watching their weathered hands grip the oar with practiced ease. Mirror their movements, feeling the rhythm of the row take hold of you. The water splashes rhythmically against the hull, a steady beat accompanying your every stroke. As the sun climbs higher, you turn to face the wind, squinting against its refreshing touch. The salty spray kisses your skin, invigorating you like a baptism. The ship leans into the waves, a familiar motion that rocks you gently. This is your world now. For as long as you row, you are free, unstoppable, connected to the heartbeat of the ship and the boundless horizon. Ahead lies the promise of discovery, of new lands and untold adventures. With each stroke of the oar, you bring the Viking dream of exploration to life. We have rowed for a while, haven't we? But now the shores of our journey draw near. Let us disembark one by one, stepping onto solid ground once more. Leave the ship behind, its fate intertwined with the fates of those who've sailed before you. Turn to the shore, letting the sand anchor you to the present. The sea wind still sings in your ears, the rhythm of the oars echoing in your heart. Ahead, a village awaits, a tapestry of life woven into the fabric of the Viking world. It's time to explore it. But for now, your journey comes to an end. Thank you for venturing with us through time. We hope you've enjoyed this glimpse into the Viking Age. Don't forget to stay tuned for more journeys through history. Till next time, keep exploring.